Are my thoughts, or are they someone else's thoughts? You stay out of this right now, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? So how can we say that Hillel, Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer, how can we say that they shared with us their life advice, ethics advice, moral advice, different types of advice, and say that that's from Sinai? Is it their own ideas or is it Hashem's ideas? It's a very interesting idea to appreciate and understand. How about ourselves now, today? Person wants to walk around saying, listen, I had an insight yesterday, so listen to what God told me yesterday. I'm like, listen, you need some medication, perhaps, maybe give me some more. You're getting us. Also, we'll both take it together, but God did not tell you anything yesterday. So how do we balance being kind of discerning what's my wisdom, what's my feeling, what's my opinion, which is worth what it's worth, and what's an expression of something that's higher than myself, that's coming through me, which we call Torah, which we call divine wisdom. The wisdom that God shared with, first and foremost, the nation of Israel and continues to share with the entire world through the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. How do we understand how that works? Hashem is infinite in his ability to share his wisdom. That said, he created a system where it's two partners involved, meaning his wisdom is there to grasp. The amount of work we do ourselves to prepare ourselves to be a proper vessel facilitates the proper and clear grasping of that divine wisdom. For example, even to reach the level of Ruach HaKodesh in English is translated as divine inspiration, but it really is a divine communication, just on a lower level than prophecy. To reach Ruach HaKodesh, divine communication, which is available even in our times, so it requires the recipient to work on himself to the degree where he absolutely and totally purifies himself, his thoughts, his attributes, his nature, how he behaves. He's pure, he becomes a pure and holy vessel, which again, I'm simplifying, but that could take 70, 80 years, and only the best of the best reach this level of purity to be able to receive this divine communication. And even so, once he reaches that highest level that we can even imagine, it's beyond anything we could conceive or perceive. Once he reaches that high level and is able to receive divine communication, he then has to be concerned that maybe that communication was not 100% clear, 100% true. Why? Because I might have had traces of evil, traces of negativity in my soul that will pervert and twist the information that I'm receiving right now. So I still may not even be able to trust what I think I just perceived from God, because I may not be on the absolute level to be a real, true conduit for his wisdom. An example of this could be appreciated from a small story from one of the great sages of later times. He was one of the greatest Kabbalists ever, and he revealed tremendous secrets of Torah. He explains the Zohar. Without him, we wouldn't really understand the Zohar perhaps today. His name was Rabbi Isaac Luria, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria in Hebrew, the Arizal. He lived in Tzfat. He was a tremendously righteous person and a holy person. He had Ruach HaKodesh. He was responsible to do many miracles, open miracles we saw by him. He was able to read people's minds. He knew what was happening in heaven. He was a very unique, special person that lived in the 1500s. He received a new set or new revelations and a clear understanding of what we call Kabbalah, and it was his job to pass it on to one student, yet they gathered many students, but his main goal was to teach one student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, and through that, this wisdom would be passed on to the whole world. And today, when we learn Kabbalah, proper Kabbalah, it's really as it was explained and taught through the lens and the vessel of the Arizal's teachings. Now, he says very clearly to his student, Rav Chaim Vital, he says, look, even though I taught to an entire group of people, let's say 10, 15 people, I only give you permission to write down my teachings and pass them over to the future generations. Why? Because only you were on the level and able to clearly understand the pure and essence of that lesson and not include your own misunderstandings or your own lack of understanding. So the only person that's allowed from all of my students here to write my teachings, and therefore that will represent the future of all Kabbalah learning, is you, because you're on the level to have a complete, perfect, clear understanding of what I taught. And all those other rabbis, which all looked righteous and were all very holy, very special, but they weren't 100% vessels for the information, so they would understand it each in their own way, and that wasn't good enough to be the basis to teach all of the future generations Kabbalah. So it was only allowed to pass through one student officially. With that said, let's go back to our Mishnah now. They were talking about Pirkei Avot. So these rabbis, these sages, were the holiest of sages that were this vessel. They represented this pure, clear, pristine glass vessel that divine wisdom came in, and the way it came in, it came out. Unbelievable. But even with that, we have to appreciate each student, each person, each vessel has its own unique shape, its own unique look. And so even the fact that they received this divine wisdom and gave it out selflessly, without mixing in their own personal, lower level, animalistic, personal agenda levels input, still each rabbi still passes out that information slightly different. That's why Bet Shammai was known to be strict, because his soul was rooted in the realm of severity, strictness. So his Torah ideas tend to be more strict. Hillel was rooted on the side of kindness. So his ideas tend to be more lenient. They represent, so to speak, the right, which is the kind hand of God, and the left, the strict punishing hand of God. And it's like they're two different hands of Hashem representing and expressing godly wisdom. God's wisdom is expressed in many different levels, many different aspects. You know, there are 70 faces to the Torah. There are 6,000 letters and pathways of Torah. This is very deep and very beautiful. And each rabbi and each person on some level has his ability to see his unique take on it and share that. But again, to be on the level of pure Torah, you have to do the work. You have to be ready and become a vessel so that you shouldn't pervert or taint that divine message. Now we see around us very many problems when people that think that they did the work and are ready to represent God are not. I mean, just to take a side point from a secular perspective, I remember seeing a book titled My Conversation with God from a secular person. And again, I almost had to laugh after seeing that title and seeing the person on the cover. Not that I'm being judgmental, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but a conversation with God doesn't happen just like that. If you look at the books that talk about the paths of ascending holiness and divine communication, you realize that man did not have a conversation with God. He might have taken a nice pill or two, or even without the pill, some people are just naturally creative in thought. But it was not a talk with Hashem. It wasn't talking to God. So when people that think they're on the level to be this conduit for God and they speak in His name and they're not on the level, they can cause damage and harm. We see a false Messiah that stepped up and thought he was on the level and wasn't, and he was very, very tragic and devastating to the Jewish people. We see over the years modern rabbis or so-called rabbis that stood up and said, we have a new understanding of Judaism. And they innovated Judaism, and we see what's the result of their innovation of Judaism. It's no religion. It's by the time one generation or two passes with this reformed conservative movement, so you have no more Jewish people really. You have just people that are each one making up their own way of living in life. And so that's why we have to appreciate we have a tradition. That tradition allows for creativity. It allows for individuality, but it requires work, real hard, honest work, and we have to know our place. And when we know our place, then we can start to understand everyone else's place. If we confuse our own place, then everything is out of perspective. Everything is off. And that's the work we're here to do.